Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to my least favorite rapid reaction of the year thus far. Kentucky loses a really unfortunate one to Maryland, a neutral court down in the Discover Puerto Rico Shootout, 74-66. Um, this one was really unfortunate because to start the game, you were just already down in a hole. Like you were already losing, you were already down and out, right? Or at least it felt like you were down and out. You were down 21-12 at the end of the first quarter, and you're sitting there going, I mean, what the heck? Well, to start the game, it was just pretty clear. Kentucky was just not going to be able to hit shots tonight. Kentucky shoots 25 of 58. That's 43% from the field. And to end the game, they shot 36% from three, but it looked a lot worse than that for the majority of the game. It looked like they were shooting about maybe 25%, 20% from three. It was just really bad basketball. And to start the game, you were so sloppy, for no good reason. You were so sloppy. You looked bad. I mean, Tony Morgan, I give her credit for 22 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds. But she turned the ball over 8 times. And Kentucky as a team turned the ball over 20 times. And that's just not going to get it done against a top 10 team. It was really unfortunate. Kentucky waited to make their really big run towards the end of the game, kind of when it was too little too late. You were down, double digits at the half, but Kenny has done such a good job of making halftime adjustments, and Kentucky coming out, starting the third quarter kind of strong. That didn't happen. I got down 52-32. And at that point, you're sitting there 15 minutes to go in the game. Okay, against a team as good as Maryland, that's asking a lot to make that kind of comeback. I thought some people that played really well against Louisville played really poorly tonight. I look at Tiani Key, immediately 4 points, nothing else. 4 points and five fouls. She fouled out of the game. Played only 14 minutes. Can't have that from your starter. You can't have that from somebody who you so greatly depend on. Clara Strack, didn't get a double-double. 9 points, 9 rebounds, played 39 minutes. Like Maryland just executed their game plan. Like Maryland did what they wanted to do. I thought it was pretty clear kind of right out the gate. Maryland was going to make Tony Morgan shoot threes. And to her credit, I mean, she shot 4 or 5 from deep, but you can't. If you're Maryland, you're not going to expect her to do that. And for them, it's like, okay, you are not going to drive Tony Morgan. You are not going to drive by our guards and score. It was just so unfortunate. I look at the free throws, and Maryland did shoot 23. Kentucky did shoot 8. There's an argument to be made there. Is that the difference in the game? I can't even say that right now because I just feel like Kentucky left so much on the table, in general. I don't know if the officiating was great, but I'm not going to sit here and say the game came down to free throws. Okay? Now, for me to sit here and cope and, try to talk about this game in a somewhat positive manner, I think Kentucky did some okay things, like they didn't make those runs, and that was encouraging. Amelia Hassett scored 10 points, right? I mean, Tony Morgan was great outside of the 8 turnovers, I guess, but defensively, like I know Maryland only scored 74. That's the most anyone scored on Kentucky this season, and I know that's, I know 74 is not a huge number, but Smickle and Garza were just lighting you up. Right? I mean, they had half of Maryland's damn points. It's so frustrating because, even against Louisville, like Taj Roberts had 19 points in the first half. It's always just like there's always one player who seems to be able to go off against Maryland, or with Maryland, it was 2. And it's just so frustrating. You hold Oluchi Okonowa to 4 points, 0 of 7 from the field. That's great. She, 16 points per game. Their best player, you hold her to 4 points. You tell me that before the game, I probably think Kentucky wins this one. But you let everybody else do good work. Sarah Poffenbarger had 12 points. Addie Mack, she had a point where she scored like 7 points in a row. She had 15 against you. it's just so frustrating because, again, I feel like Kentucky did good, and I feel like they had some chances to come back and maybe even try to win this game. But every time they kind of started to try to make a push, Maryland would respond. You know, if Kentucky lost by 8, but it felt like for so long, okay, you're about to get it down to single digits. Here's a Maryland 5-0 run. And it's just, again, I feel like Kentucky just left stuff on the table. Now, again, to try to be positive, um, losing to Maryland by 8 on a neutral court, objectively speaking, in the month of November, that's not a bad thing at all. I said this on the podcast, and I still believe it to be true. I think Maryland is the best team in the country outside of the S tier group of teams, your national championship contenders, that I think is UConn, South Carolina, UCLA, Texas. Those two played today. That was a really good game. Texas ended up winning that one, and LSU. I think Maryland is the best team in the country outside of that. And even then, I think they can make a push for that 5th spot because LSU hasn't played anybody yet. So, Maryland's going to be a really good team this season. That's a team that can win 30 games this year. This, like, objectively speaking, this is not a bad loss. And if good losses exist, this is one of them. I said, again, on the podcast, you play Maryland, just don't get blown out. And it looked like that was going to happen, but I do like the fight that Kentucky showed in the end, that some of that adversity. But just looking at the stat sheet, like, there's nothing good to talk about. Asia Boone had 13, and that's just, that's nice. But, I mean, somebody had to score the damn points, Look at the rebounding, I'm looking at the official stats, which are not – this is not ran very well. I don't even know whose stats are whose. Let's see if I can figure out looking at turnovers. Okay, so Kentucky's on the left side. So Kentucky out-rebounded Maryland 38-36. I wouldn't have thought that necessarily. Offensive glass, Maryland had 13 rebounds. Don't love that. But just looking at a lot of the stats, like, things are pretty even, and even a lot of them are in Kentucky's favor. It's just, again, I think the story of the game, you couldn't hit open shots when you needed them. There was one possession, Kentucky had 3 wide open threes in a row, and you miss all of them. I remember Clara Stracantioni keep missing wide open layups. You just can't do that against the top 10 team. I don't think, like, if Maryland played up to their normal standard, I think Kentucky loses this one by 20, right? It's frustrating because I feel like Kentucky lost this game more than Maryland won it, and that just really sucks. Because, again, tip to the cap to Maryland. They obviously did good. They did some good stuff. But, like, I didn't leave that game thinking, well, Maryland they just straight up outplay Kentucky. That is a top 5 team in the country. I think Maryland is that good, but I think Kentucky just didn't play up to their standard, and that's just what the unfortunate part is. Again, 21 of 23 from the free throw line for Maryland, 6 of 8 for Kentucky. I think that does matter. I'm not going to chalk everything down to just free throws, though. I don't want to sit here and say that, the game came down to referees. I don't want to say that. I don't want to believe that, right? There are points where you just left points on the table here and there. And Maryland, like, you just let them score a little too much here and there. So, again, I think Kentucky, you look at this loss, and when we're looking at this game in February, we're going to sit there and think, well, this was at least a good litmus test for Kentucky. Again, it's better to lose this game now than in March, okay? And again, you only lose by 8 to a top 10 team on a neutral court. I think that tells you Kentucky is somewhere in that range. I think Maryland is, like, if you're asking me, I think the Maryland's the number 6 team in the country. Okay, I think you can say Kentucky, could be pushing top 10. Like, I think between 10 and 15 is right where Kentucky should be in the national rankings. It sucks because I know after this loss, Kentucky probably is going to fall down in the rankings, and I don't think they should necessarily. I think Maryland should go up, but again, It's just one of those things, right? So Kentucky loses 74-66, not ideal at all. Heading into this game, you're like, if we win, are we a top 5 team somewhere around there? But there's a lot of basketball left to be played this season, and it's not like you lost to a dud of a team, and it's not like you lost by 20 at North Carolina again. And North Carolina was good last year, but still, you didn't lose by a ton. You showed some fight, which I do appreciate. You just got to clean up some stuff, okay? You can't come into this game playing against a number 7 team in the country and be sloppy and, for the first 15 minutes of the game not look like you're ready to play. And then coming out of the half, you can't go down by 20. You know what I mean? So I know ifs and buts, candies and nuts. Kentucky did lose the game, 74-66, but again, I'm encouraged a little bit. I don't think this is a complete wash of a game. I don't think this is a complete, oh God, we're horrible kind of game. Just got to clean up some stuff. Just got to execute better. As like I said on the podcast, I didn't think Kentucky was going to go undefeated there in non-conference play. That's a lot to ask, especially when you're not LSU and you don't play complete D2s every single game, right? Like Kentucky, you lost one, and you know what? You lost to a team you probably should have lost to on paper. Respond on Friday, beat Morgan State by 60. They're horrible. Beat Morgan State by 1,000, and then you come back next week here in the continental United States and just continue winning, right? Go into the SEC play with one loss. Go to Baton Rouge thinking, okay, we lost to Maryland. Let's make that up by beating LSU. Okay, Kentucky, don't skip over any opponent. Don't overlook anybody. Just take care of business. Get to SEC play with one loss, and I think overall we can sit here and look at non-con as a success for the most part. Just tonight, not quite as much. So again, like I said, 74-66 for Kentucky. This has been Phoenix Stevens with KSR's rapid reaction of the game. We're going to get on over to the Kentucky-Tennessee Tech men's basketball game. So until next time, again, thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. If you're watching, I'm sure you're not very happy about that loss. Comment your emotions without, doing something that'll get you banned off YouTube. All right, I'm Phoenix Stevens with KSR's Rapid Reaction. 74-66 Terps. Kentucky looks to bounce back on Friday. We will see you guys then. Peace out.